You wake up in a dark room with only the sound of clucking surrounding you. Chickens everywhere. You walk down the only path available to you, where you see what appears to be a clown dressed like a soldier, or maybe a soldier with clown makeup. When approached, he asks the most important question: can you fry eggs on top of Mount Everest? He follows that up by saying that he doesn't think so. The bottom will cook, but the top would freeze. The soldier then reminds you that after your last attempt to escape, the boss stripped you of all your main functions. All you're allowed to do now is walk and cook some delicious eggs. Now it's time for you to summon up all the expertise and experience that you've built up here in the dark, learning how to master the way of cooking eggs. You whip out your trusty frying pan and crack open an egg on it. The clown soldier would not be going hungry today. Once fully cooked on both sides, the soldier gladly accepts this cooked egg from you. A delicious poultry treat to alleviate his hunger. His day would be better from now on. He tells you that if you want to escape this Arctic refuge, you would need permission of the Saint of Six Stomachs. And to get an audience with him, you will have to go out into the city and feed those citizens that are hungry, nursing their bodies with delicious eggs. The world must know the beauty, glamour, and glory of chicken egg. You step out into the blinding light. Once the poultry prepper's eyes adjust to the brightness, he looks around at this futuristic, purple-fogged landscape filled with quirky individuals. A nearby person mentions how the drone stopped stocking the vending machines, so he had to drink his coffee out of a bowl like a savage again. And then he does a little dance to celebrate. We're not sure what he's celebrating, but I'm sure he can find something to dance to in this psychedelic landscape. Standing in the dim fog and snowfall, a woman in a large fur coat asks us if we're the new poultry prepper, and then adds that the last one didn't last long. It's no trivial responsibility to be the poultry prepper here in this Arctic refuge. She tells us that she would like an egg cooked on both sides, as always, but with a twist. She asks if we can also cook it with her cigarette, since she likes the flavor that cooking eggs with cigarettes adds to it. Some would call it cigareggs, a new culinary experience for anybody that loves the taste of an ashtray. So the poultry prepper starts preparing this exquisite tasting experience as he starts to cook the egg on both sides before the cigarette runs out, giving him a time limit. Diligently, he focuses on managing the pan, flipping the egg as quickly as he can to deliver this cigarette-flavored egg. Yum. Tastes like an ashtray. Once the eggs are ready, you notice that the woman is impressed with how you handle the pan. Your skills were being noticed. The eggs were being cooked. The woman adds she won't forget this moment. It feels special. Nearby the woman, you'll find two men dressed in red and blue. One of them says that he wishes they'd invent a toilet that didn't whisper sweet nothings into your ear. The other man replies that the playful whispers in the bathrooms are dolphins or chickens playing hide and seek. How right he was without knowing. Having enough of this conversation, you move on to the next local that you see. He tells you that he's making a time lapse of meat rotting in his apartment and that he hopes it really pays off. And I hope so too. Nearby, you overhear the conversation of two women that's a cautionary tale for why you need someone to prepare your poultry products correctly and cooked to the right temperature. A woman is telling the other woman that the smuggled chicken had salmonella. The other woman asks if she cooked the chicken at all. The other person says that they gave the chicken a quick Italian sear, nothing fancy. And we all know what happens when you undercook chicken. Note, don't undercook chicken, cook it. One of the two says incorrectly that you can get salmonella from iguanas. I don't know if that's true, but please don't eat iguanas, they're probably endangered. And they're kinda cute when you think about it. Also, don't eat raw chicken. As someone that accidentally ate a bunch of raw chicken once, or I should say partially cooked chicken, in college once, don't do it, it's not a good idea. I had to throw it all up. Hey, it was dark, I couldn't see. Once the eggs and bacon are cooked, the two people seem happy. One of them points out that a good meal requires a specific balance of cold and hot elements. Wrapping up business with these two, the protagonist will go speak to the man behind the grill. He greets us warmly and asks if it will take some meat off of his hands, since he's way behind on this. You see, he can hear stomachs grumbling from across the room. It slows him down. It's his version of stage fright. He needs help, someone to help him cook all this meat. So he hands you a link of sausage, and you take the man's meat. Delicious, yummy sausage, just never ask how it's made. Cooking all these eggs and sausages in one pan can be a little bit of a challenge, but there's no meat that our poultry prepper cannot handle effectively in his pan. Once you're done handling his meat, the man is pleased, and he appreciates your help, especially in these cold and trying times here in the Arctic. The man is impressed and in awe in the way you sling and the way you fling. Your work here is done. Moving on, you find another man that is hungry. He has a stupid shirt with a dumber face on it. He tells you that the meat man that you just helped handle his sausage is his brother Tony. And Tony doesn't actually like cooking. He's just trying to build up skills and credibility. He wants to impress the Saint of Six Stomachs in order to get permission to leave this compound. Another man from the same group tells you that he doesn't need sex. He stole bacon from downstairs, so he's okay. You help the man out by cooking for him and learn that he also likes cigarettes, but he likes to throw in some bacon. You see, the bacon's fat absorbs the taste of the cigarette very well. The man shudders with anticipation once the meal is ready, and he thanks you for brightening up his day with a scrumptious plate of cigarettes and bacon. A nearby soldier expresses his desire to stay alive, to eat another egg another day. But he's not hungry right now, nor would he be dying today. The poultry prepper continues looking around for more people to feed as he hears the murmur of all the conversations around him. A nearby soldier mentions that the Six Stomach Saint banned poultry farms in an odd and surprising move. But then again, this was an odd and surprising world. The soldier adds that kids don't even call each other chicken anymore. The soldier doesn't know if it's because the kids don't know what a chicken is, or if it's just not an insult anymore, since you're basically calling someone delightful, or a delicacy. The inhabitants of this Arctic world really enjoy their poultry products. It must be nice to be a delightful delicacy to somebody. I'm sure that's a ubiquitous sentiment. The next group of people in the crowd tells us that all of them have a jar of honey in the bathroom. Hey, it might be useful in a sticky situation. Someone else mentions that if anybody uses the word ubiquitous in a sentence, it's okay to ignore whatever they're about to say. Hey, that's not true. And then she says that the same goes for the word tumultuous. To help satisfy the ubiquitous and tumultuous hunger of the crowd, our poultry prepper drops a set of tumultuous eggs into his ubiquitous frying pan. Okay, that doesn't even make sense. The poultry prepper could feel his skill with the frying pan improve as he gradually inched closer to his audience with the Six Stomach Saint, who will maybe grant him freedom from this Arctic refuge. After finishing cooking the eggs, one of the women says, "Regarding the tumultuous nature of our request, it is surprising to see the uniform ubiquity you managed to consistently deliver across all these eggs. The multifaceted relationship between the yolk and the white is truly inspiring and really speaks to your ability. Fucking thanks." A nearby blonde woman in a thick white jacket describes how she salvages leftover food to you, and then she asks you to cook her some eggs that tastes exactly like an old ashtray at a nightclub. The poultry prepper is here to feed people and not ask questions about their dietary habits. Once the cigarettes are ready, she tells you that this is good for her. Next to be fed is a soldier that likes to go to karaoke and then request songs that he knows are not available. Genius. He asks you to cook him some nice cans of sardines, still in the can, to give it that nice lead flavor. You know how people love it when fish tastes like metal? There's people to be fed, no time for questions. Another nearby soldier gossips how he thinks that the Saint of Six Stomachs is an avid mouthwash enthusiast. If he puts his ear up to the wall, he can sometimes hear the saint gargling. The soldier adds that he's trying to distract himself, given that the number of chickens that they've captured that week has been very low. The people's hearts just aren't into it. Or maybe it's just hard to catch chickens in the Arctic. Approaching two soldiers who are appreciating the beauty of snowfall, we hear, "Gaze upon this fish ration, my companion for the last 10 years. Been waiting for the right moment to eat it. I want you to be the moment." Pop it open and flip the fish out so they can cook. They say that soldiers are very capable of enjoying the small things in life, since their jobs are so risky and death is never far away from them. This man's simple joy is some canned sardines cooked in the can with a cigarette. "I won't forget this moment," the soldier says. And so the poultry prepper presses on, preparing more poultry for the people of the plaza. Next, we proceeded, plodding past a foggy, picturesque dance hall packed with partygoers. A peculiar woman asked the eternal question, "Can you fry an egg on Mount Everest?" If you're as close to heaven as you can be, while still being on the earth, you wouldn't want to eat your eggs raw. That's how you get salmonella. But how would you cook it? Would you cook it in base camp and then take it up? Meal prepping is a skill and can be helpful. But cooking an egg on the top of Mount Everest does seem to be quite a challenge. Maybe in the future, we'll be able to invent some device that leverages the ideal gas law to easily cook an egg at the top of Mount Everest without carrying too much equipment. But we do not live in a civilization with that type of technology. Not yet anyway. But soon, as long as we believe. One of the women adds that she just wants to cook an egg up there, and she would feel like she's cheating if she brought up a cooked egg. Her friend responds, "The heart has its reasons, of which reason knows nothing." Now there's something you want to think about. Sounds like something you'd get tattooed at a shady tattoo parlor after a 36-hour party binge on gas station trucker drugs as you're waiting for the hangover to kick in. Nearby, you see a pretty young woman sitting on a pile of trash. She says that her culinary knowledge is always useful when dealing with toilets. Whenever you first lay a steak down in the pan, you lay it away from yourself, so the hot stuff doesn't sputter up and hit you. Same principle applies when scrubbing the toilet bowl, because you don't want to get pink eye, do you? Nearby, there's a man with a very nice coat and a face of some kind. He's speaking to a disembodied brain in the trash. He asks, "Are you still chugging along?" The trash brain responds, "Leaking, but still feeling. I wish they would play a different song. The song, for whatever reason, decreases your leakage." The brain replies, "I met the composer in prison. Maybe that's why." The human with the face replies, "Anyways, I'm ordering you some food and a beverage." "Oh nice," replies the trash brain. "Please be careful with the beverage. I don't mind if it spills, but it definitely makes things harder." Well, fortunately for both of them, the poultry prepper is nearby to provide both a drink and a meal, serving up a fine order of beer egg. In some parts of the city, they preferred cigar eggs, or eggs that tasted like licking a burnt down house. But here, in this part of town near the nightclub, people were different. They were cut from a different cloth. They like to season their fried egg with beer, nice and cold. The trash brain smiles. Even the brain, the organ of marvels, succumbs to the echoes of the stomach. That's why the six-stomach saint rules this town, and not the trash brain. The inside of the nightclub is blinding, and thick fog makes it hard to see a few feet, giving the partygoers lots of privacy, even though everything is well lit. The nightclub is filled with an eccentric cast of characters. Not any more or less eccentric than the other parts of this weird Arctic city, but a different type of eccentric. A dancing woman with ugly gloves says fuck daylight savings time and fuck room temperature liquid. Two nearby women sitting at a table carry on a conversation. They would have to get wet in this sea of dance, they say. Dance just clouds the air, like a salty humidity. I don't have a fuzzy towel. Her friend replies, unfortunate. I am feeling moist. Then she gets up and contributes to the sea of dance. Satisfied, she sits back down and announces that she's gotten them some beers. Sharing a drink has been a symbol of friendship since times immemorial. And this gesture of friendship only gets better if you add in some egg. Truly amazed by your ability to cook eggs, the two women are flabbergasted. You know, maybe things will turn out alright after all. Nearby, a woman's keeping her friend, who is sleeping on trash, company. She mentions that she's met the Saint of Six Stomachs before. She was friends with her daughter. He looked like the owner of a place she used to work at. He was a very insecure man that made them hang Christmas lights underneath the table. But after all the surgeries and the marinating, she doubts that the Saint of Six Stomachs still looks that way. Rubbish Lady complains that her ice is too cold, but she doesn't want water either. So she asks if you could heat up some ice in a glass. Another patron of the nightclub stands up and convulses in front of you. It sits back down and says, I don't need sex. Government fucks me every day. A nearby soldier looks on in horror and says, I'm a little bit uncomfortable. Patrons and SMGs can be seen moving melodically on the dance floor. A soldier asks you, what's the last thing I'm going to do on my phone, like before I die? The soldiers cannot resist showing the world their sweet dance moves as they sway melodically with their firearms. Some bacon egg, along with some hot ice, is exactly what they need to keep their energy up so they can keep showing off their sweet moves. Your average egg will have about 90 calories and 6 grams of protein, making it an important part of a balanced diet in an active lifestyle. The Poultry Prepper approaches two people in the midst of dance ecstasy. Can I interest you in an egg in these trying times? The Poultry Prepper continues looking for hungry people to feed. He needs to feed more people before he's granted an audience with the Six Stomach Saint. At a table nearby in the nightclub, you find a man that's wearing a patch in order to keep one of his eyes secret from the world. But we all know what he's hiding underneath that eye patch. The person that's hiding an eye is informed it is very possible to hide chickens behind toilets. The man with no depth perception replies that no, 2 in 1 fortnight, we would have our very own anti-disestablishmentarianism. What the fuck does that even mean? Continuing our search for people that must be fed a chicken's bounty. We meet a woman wearing a man's face. She's got the ugliest coat in a small town of hideous fashion. She says that all roads should be replaced with non-Newtonian fluids so that if you go slow, you sink. The nightclub's bartender tells you that he thought this job would be his ticket out of here, since bar food is easy to make and there are rarely any complaints. He thought that the Saint of Six Stomachs would notice him quicker, but hardly any of these people eat, only drinks. People at nightclubs, not being hungry, might have to do a lot with the narcotics that they're on. Party drugs famously make you not want to eat. The bartender is impressed. He has never made drinks that quickly before. He doesn't have the skills of the Poultry Prepper. He debates quitting, but honestly, not much compares to watching condensation dripping down a wet glass. Carry on, my friend. The Poultry Prepper continues. He makes his way to the nightclub bathroom, where the drugs and sex happens. Here, he finds somebody worshipping a toilet, looking down into the endless depths of it. The person says that you would not believe what they dropped into the toilet, though I can take a guess, and ask you to jump down it and grab it. And so you climb into the ethereal void of the toilet. On the other side, you open your eyes and see an endless blue expanse in front of you. This is where the dolphins live, the chicken of the sea. If you're lucky, maybe you'll find some dolphin eggs down here. Anytime you're suddenly deep underwater in the ocean, you always get the urge for a cigarette, so you take a long, deep drag. That's why submarines, famously, smell so much like cigarettes. And dolphins are so susceptible to lung cancer. You approach a woman, deep in conversation with a dolphin. The woman has come here to consult the dolphin's wisdom and ask the eternal question, can you fry eggs on top of Mount Everest? But the sea mammal will not give up its wisdom without paying a price. You must place an egg in its mouth before he reveals what he knows about Mount Everest, something all dolphins know very much about. A sea creature rises out of the abyss, waiting for your offering. The flickering torch brutalizes the blackened sun. Chirping like a cricket, seared in midnight, calling for an answer, marinated in the stars' whisper. But his response remains unsatisfactory. An echo peppers the air. We must forgive the crickets, the roosters of the moon. With this deep ocean wisdom, we move on to the next phase of our journey, to the prison, where all the bad robots were kept. Here, malfunctioning and innocent robots would dance, raise cockroaches, nap, and find other ways to pass their time imprisoned. The first one we encounter explains how he works up a sweat so that the bugs will find him desirable. He offers us his finest cockroach to cook with, to use as seasoning for the eggs. He asks us to make sure not to let his cockroach escape. It's his favorite. The robotic prisoners weren't allowed cigarettes, so they had to find creative ways to season their eggs. And nearly every robot in here had his favorite cockroach. The robot thanks you when you give him the egg and his cockroach back. A headless robot tells you, let me tell you something. Do not bite at the bait of pleasure till you know there is no hook beneath it. Thomas Jefferson said that. To him, personally, this robot had been around. A nearby robot, lazing around in his bunk, tells you that he wishes he could have tried his hand at poultry prepping. It's not his fault that he cut off his left hand when he was 12. He was bored. This world is run by lefties. Actually, is the Saint of Six Stomachs left-handed? Not sure, but can you check up on me for that? To finally lay this to rest. A robot with a VR headset for a head shares that he's been working on some new music. It's kinda a bastardization of techno-neoclassicist genre. I used a lot of reverberant clucking for the percussion. I hope this will be the catalyst in reconsidering the ban on poultry. Or at the very least, it could compel the government to clarify how they handle the chickens that are seized. A robot with a head the shape of a coffee can says, he figured out what chickens are for. Their gizzards are extremely pliable when exposed to toilet water. Here, take a look. He asks you to cook a cube of meat, along with a cigarette for some seasoning. The cube of meat jiggles uncomfortably as it moves around the pan. Don't you see? This is it, says Coffee Can Robot. Another pair of robots tells you that they've raised these guys since birth, and to not waste them. Then they hand you their prized cockroaches. The Poultry Prepper is careful to not let these little treasures escape him, as he cooks some egg for these robots. One of the robots collapses to his knees in sheer joy of what you've given them. They just never tell you how hard it's gonna be, he adds. They say the Saint of Six Stomachs has eyes that are deceptively unimportant. He understands you, even through the frosted glass. So he's got glasses? Asks the other robot. The first robot comments that his great-grandma went to school with him. Damn, he's pretty old. The first robot replies that consuming stingrays will do that to you. Birds too. My great-grandma is dead. Mine too, robot. In fact, It's a pretty safe bet most of everybody's great grandma is dead. It's just like how time works. A nearby soldier informs you that he likes to perch on the toilet like a bird. And then he shows you how he perches on the toilet like a bird. But he lives with his girlfriend now. She is Polish. And he's afraid that she's going to come into the bathroom as he's doing that. He tried to tell her the truth, but she thought he was joking. So he's been raw dogging it lately. But it's so hard. Enough of that interaction. Let's muster on. There are still people to feed. A nearby soldier is mesmerized by the chickens. He says that he used to dream about these guys for the first couple months after the ban. He always wanted a taste of the delicious chicken, but unfortunately, they taste like tomatoes now. A couple of extra soldiers are keeping a close eye on this high-value contraband of live poultry. Another soldier mentions that he doesn't need to do drugs every day, but it's cool if you do though. His thighs just got so red, he had to stop. A lovely little tidbit of personal information that we did not need. In the next cell over, we find another coffee can head robot. He says that he works for the TV station and that he loves our shoes. He warns us to be careful that if they take away our frying pan, we'll be just like him in the jail cell. Continuing exploring the prison, looking for hungry people to feed, we find a soldier that likes his eggs cooked with a little bit of excitement. He's the type of guy that likes a show with dinner. So he warns us he's going to throw shit into our frying pan as we're cooking. He just wants to get our wrist dancing. That doesn't sound very ergonometric. So as usual, we crack an egg and start cooking a scrumptious meal for him. But it's not long before we realize what he meant that he likes a show with dinner. He starts throwing bullets into the frying pan as we're cooking. Dear viewer, I don't know how much experience you have with cooking, but I can assure you, throwing live ammo into a frying pan will make things more exciting, but less safe and a lot more difficult. Just a quick note, for real, don't do this. So as the poultry prepper is focusing on his egg and when is the perfect time to flip it over to cook it perfectly all the way through, the soldier keeps throwing bullets into the frying pan, making the eggs dance a little bit more. Nearby, we hear a woman ask a soldier the eternal question: can you fry an egg on Mount Everest? He proposes that maybe you can scramble them so that no side is in the cold for too long. The woman replies, but at that point, is it even worth the risk? The soldier chimes in saying, Mount Everest is hard to climb. The achievement of getting to the top dwarfs the notion of frying an egg. The woman replies, but no one's fried an egg up there yet. I would be the first. Being the first person to do anything is of course impressive, but that isn't a substitution for quality. I would like to reinforce the message here. Climbing Mount Everest is probably very difficult. I haven't done it myself, but from pictures, it looks very big, very tall, and very cold. Frying an egg would probably be a little bit easier. A robot prisoner slumped on the toilet says, I would like to order a cockroach, but hold the roach. In another nearby cell, we notice two guards preoccupied by a prisoner. This robot cannot sit still. The guards say they would like it if he stopped that. The robot replies, how can he? He hasn't eaten in 4 days. Fortunately, that's a problem that you can help with. The robot could use another 12 grams of protein and 180 calories. They say the gunpowder really brings out the flavor of the yolk. When presented with the fried eggs, the robot says, whoa, that was entertaining and illegal. So this will be a one-time thing. Moving on, you find a cell that's being guarded where both the robots are sitting on toilets next to each other. The guard insists that they can reconfigure the toilets if needed, but it seems that both the robots enjoy having the crappers right next to each other. The soldier, with great dismay, says that he is beyond uncomfortable, and so am I. And this concludes our exploration of this weird prison for crazy robots. Descending to a lower level of this Arctic habitat, we reach, well, this place that you see on screen. I'm not really sure what to make of it. Ice, dolphins, hookahs, men with hats and underwear. A man in a militaristic hat tells us that we are poultry peasants, but perhaps his dolphins could use some entertainment. They were all decommissioned after the war with Argentina, and they yearn for some excitement. It's well known that dolphins love it when you cook eggs with bullets, lots and lots of bullets. Once the egg is ready, the man is impressed, another convert to your skills as the poultry prepper. The needlessly naked man says that he will put in a good word with Six Stomachs. He explains that the Six Stomach Saint actually helped him build this place with his chickens and his dolphins. The saint wanted to rest here with him until it was time for him to go to the New Revolt. Returning to the streets, there are still some hungry people to feed before you've proven yourself worthy of an audience with the Six Stomach Saint. A soldier explains that Enrique has been trying to find a new go-to dish ever since he found out that the Six Stomach Saint no longer eats stingrays. So experimentation with new ingredients is needed. So that's when they started cooking with pufferfish. Look at that cute little guy bouncing around the frying pan. That is one cute fish. And nothing brings out the taste in seafood than cooking it with a cigarette. I felt soothed watching you handle that pan. Didn't know I was in the splash zone. A human sitting at the counter tells you, I found a new thing to do with napkins at a restaurant. And then the human drops like an egg in oil. Returning, the human says, sorry, I thought I could tell you about it, but I just checked. I can't tell you about it, I just checked. It's best if we keep moving on. We approach a dude with a hard hat and a sweet mustache. He's pondering, how am I supposed to know which sock goes on which foot? The woman with the ball gag replies, the taste. She follows that up saying, I don't know you, do I? The mustache says no, and then the woman with the ball gag says, you deserve the biggest funeral. I guess we all deserve big funerals. Another weirdo in this strange video game says, prison was fine, it kinda just felt like a new experience. I was arrested when I was 12 because I made a got your nose joke against the Saint of Six Stomachs. Still not sure how he heard, and obviously I didn't think the punishment fit the crime at the time. As I grew older though, I began to understand. Grateful for the opportunity regardless, I could have ended up like you, stripped down to a poultry prepper. After feeding all those people, the poultry prepper takes a long drag of his cigarette. This is the beginning of the end of his quest. Finally, the poultry prepper will be able to face the Saint of Six Stomachs and ask, can you fry an egg on top of Mount Everest? A cylindrical opening is before you. As you step forward, the darkness imprisons you. The void welcomes you. All that you see is absolute horror. In the dim light, you see the first of the Saint's stomachs. A human organ being kept alive artificially in a tube, hooked up to machines. And it craves one thing, eggs. The poultry prepper thinks, may I offer you an egg in these trying times? And so our protagonist gets to work, showing off to the Saint of Six Stomachs all the skills he has carefully built up over the course of this adventure, demonstrating his mastery in handling eggs as he prepares this protein treat for the Saint. But the Saint is not easily pleased, not with just 2 eggs. He's the Saint of Six Stomachs after all. The poultry prepper now faces the second incarnation of the Saint of Six Stomachs, another human organ in a disgusting vat, slowly pulsating and writhing, much like the eggs that he's swirling around in his hot pan. Though the room is cold, the poultry prepper can't help but sweat, as he knows that the Saint of Six Stomachs is very closely watching and judging his skill with a pan and cooking eggs. This was no laughing matter, this was serious business. Impressing the Saint is the only way the poultry prepper would ever be able to ask the question, can you fry an egg on top of Mount Everest, the closest point to heaven on earth? The poultry prepper momentarily glances up from his frying pan and notices that the portion of the saint that he's cooking for appears to be his ribs, kept alive artificially in a jar, seemingly floating in some unnamed fluid, along with what appears to be a pulsating heart in the other tube next to it. His palms are sweaty, his knees are weak. He's nervous, but on the surface, he's calm and ready. He wonders, can the saint of six stomachs vomit? I mean, six stomachs? Isn't that where vomit comes from? Don't take my word for it. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. In fact, don't take my advice on anything. Don't take strangers on the internet too seriously. The only thing that is serious here are these eggs and the Poultry Prepper's skill with the pan. His wrist is sore. His forearm is getting tired. But yet he persists. He must not give up. He's come too far to end up this way. But in the end, he is going to make it matter. He's going to get the answer to his question. Chicken, egg, Everest. The next phase of his trials initiates. Now he's facing some organ that barely even looks human. It looked like a brain with arms. But could the saint of six stomachs be called human? I mean, humans by definition have one stomach. Two if you're generous. Six stomachs? Now that's pushing it. How many eggs would the Poultry Prepper have to cook to satisfy this creature, this being, this thing, this person with six stomachs? If one person can pack away at least a dozen eggs if absolutely necessary, how many eggs would it take to please a person with six stomachs? The Poultry Prepper pushed these questions away. He was a mere mortal, standing in front of a god who was gracious enough to grant him an audience, to humor him as the human humbly asked the eternal question about the true nature of reality and what would happen if you tried to fry an egg all the way up the Everest. The Poultry Prepper didn't know how much longer he could endure this. He only saw chickens in the darkness. These hens must be part of the saint's personal flock, his prized chickens. Cluck, 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 they say to the Poultry Prepper, but the Poultry Prepper barely hears them. He's in the zone, the egg zone. He's in a state of mind, completely focused and absorbed. 100% of who he is focused on the task at hand, frying these eggs to perfection. It's these once-in-a-lifetime moments that define who you are and the life you will lead. The Buddhists call this nirvana. Here we are, everything we've worked for, the culmination of our plans and effort, a moment to get the attention of a god, to present our humble offerings to him in exchange for eternal wisdom. Now you have caught the attention of the saint of six stomachs. He notices you. The saint of six stomachs acknowledges your pain and your suffering, all the work and training you have done to get to this point, to try to prove yourself worthy of his attention. He looks at you from his face that can barely be recognized as human, and one of his hands in the tube next over. The deity speaks. He says, "Can you fry eggs on top of Mount Everest?" "Never thought about it," he says. "Perhaps it's irrelevant? For me, anyways." The saint takes his time processing this, thinking it over, bouncing the idea around in his head that's in a jar. But still, he says, there's movement at the tube that holds his hand. The saint, the god, the deity, tells you to drop your pan, put it down, and in its place take his hand, for he will lead you to where you're trying to go. It's time for you to get your answers. Your struggles are done. Your journey is over. The voyage is complete. You feel the saint's cold hand grasp your warm one. With a smile, he says, "Let me know." And ladies and gentlemen, that is Arctic Eggs. And as the credits roll, we get a scene of the Poultry Prepper in a futuristic sci-fi flying vehicle making his way to Mount Everest, where he will finally find out, can you fry an egg on top of Mount Everest? So thank you very much for watching. I hope you had as much fun watching this video as I did making it. Check out my other content, like and subscribe and all that stuff that you've heard 1,000 times before. Or you know what? Don't like and don't subscribe. That's fine too. It's up to you. It's like, whatever. But legit, thank you for your time and watching this stupid video that I made. Cigarettes. Low. That was my wife's idea, by the way. Shout out to my wife. You're awesome. Take care of yourself and be well. I love you. Bye. But wait, haha, there's more. This video has an after credit scene, just like the Marvel movies. The scene opens, we're on top of Mount Everest. The flying vehicle has crashed, but we've survived. And it's time to finally put to rest the eternal question. Can you fry an egg on top of Mount Everest? The Poultry Prepper begins his ascent, climbing to the very top of the world, the closest you can get to heaven while still being on Earth. The cold wind numbs his cheeks, as the snow makes it impossible to see more than a few meters in any direction. With the spaceship crashed, he knew this was a one-way trip. He kept climbing this stairway to heaven. He didn't relent in the face of oxygen deprivation, cold, and fatigue. He couldn't give up here on the rooftop of the world. In the distance, he sees a silhouette. He makes his way to it. At the summit, the Poultry Prepper finds a solitary hen waiting for him. She must have some eggs. Who's a good chicken? You're a good chicken. Who's such a good chicken? Look at you. This is a cute little chickie. I just realized this game is all hens and no cock.